All right, welcome back. So finally, the data. I couldn't wait to get here, and we're here now. So the purpose of this isn't to understand what kind of all of the code is doing. We'll cover that in detail, and particularly for like the first 3 or 4 weeks of this course, we'll have a lot of the detail about the functions we're about to talk about. So the purpose is not to do that. It's just to get everyone used to running code chunks in R, to changing kind of minor things here and there, and then to see what happens when we get an error and kind of how to fix that. So something that I didn't mention at the end of the last video is saving. So if your file is in a red color, then that means that you've done something and that it hasn't been saved yet. And so if you're on a Mac, you could use Command S to save. A PC, I'm 99% sure Control S will save your file, or you could just go to File and Save. Mine's blacked out because I just saved, but if you kind of do something, file, save. All right, and so that'll kind of save your work so far. What we're going to talk about at first is this alcohol consumption data. And so that should already be a file in your bottom right-hand window. And if you run this line using either Command Enter or Control Enter, you should see the data set appear in your bottom left-hand window. And so it'll tell you that the data set was parsed with a certain specification. We're not going to worry about that right now, but it's definitely something we'll worry about in the future. For now, I've just made sure that the data is in a good form for it to get parsed correctly. And then you should see kind of a little preview of the data. And so we see that our data set has different countries. And then it looks like for each of those countries, it has the beer servings, spirit servings, and wine servings. And so spirit servings is just like hard liquor. And then total. And so all of this is in per capita or per person. And so, for example, Algeria, they have an average of 25 beer servings per person per year. And so different countries have kind of different amounts. And so if we want to kind of reference this data set later, we've got to give it a name. And so in the next code chunk, we're giving it a name using this assignment operator. And so in R, this is how you would name something, is with this little caret symbol and then a dash is our assignment operator. And so what I'm doing here is I'm naming this alcohol data. And so now at any point in the future, if I want to reference this alcohol data set, I don't have to read it in again, so I don't have to use this read CSV anymore. All I have to do is type in alcohol data, since that's what I named it, and it should pop up. Okay, cool. So we've got a little bit of the description that I just said verbally that you could look at in case you want to go back to it. And so one kind of big overall goal of this class is for us to all be able to pose some interesting questions about a data set and then kind of use the functions and tools that we've learned to answer those questions. And so, for example, I might want to look at maybe the distribution of the total liters of alcohol that is consumed per person, see what that looks like across countries. And one graph that we can make to do that, you might remember from Introstat, is just a histogram of the total liters of pure alcohol. And so if you run the code that's in this code chunk here, you should see a graph appear in your bottom right-hand window like it does for me. And so you could click the zoom button to zoom in if you want kind of a closer look. You could see that most or a lot of countries don't consume very little or no alcohol, whereas a few countries are kind of in this upper end, consuming almost 15 liters of alcohol per person per year. All right, so kind of scattered around these tutorial things are little questions that you should answer, and then at the end you'll turn in your .rmd file for a few points. And so most of the time I've tried to denote questions with a little asterisk symbol and then this line break symbol to indicate that you should put your answer there. And so if you kind of see this, then you know that, okay, this is a question that I should be answering. Most of the time the questions are really not meant to be too difficult. And so like this one, what's the shape of the distribution? You might remember from Introstat that this one is right skewed because it has that longer right tail. All right, and so I might also want to see where a specific country falls on this histogram. And so again, the purpose isn't to understand what all of this code is doing, because it's a lot, and we'll talk about it later. But if you run, so starting here, and you click Command Enter, and then Command Enter again, you should see this red line appear that marks where the United States of America falls on this distribution. So unsurprisingly, at least to me, the United States is pretty far to the right, indicating that we consume kind of a lot of alcohol per person. So one thing that's cool is that you should be able to kind of see where you would change in this code chunk if you wanted to look at a different country. And so you could run this kind of view alcohol data to bring up this Excel spreadsheet window and choose a country that kind of interests you if you want to mark it on this graph. And so then in this code chunk, you could kind of reason intuitively. So we'll be doing kind of a lot of this where we kind of find someone else's code, but maybe we want to modify it to suit our own purposes. I'm seeing here, I specified country equals USA. That must be where we choose what country gets marked with the red line. And so I'm going to change that to Denmark, which is where I really want to visit, and then rerun those 2 lines of code. You should now see a new red line, Denmark drinks more alcohol than we do per person, appear on the graph. And so you should go ahead and change that to a country that interests you. Maybe if you're from a particular country that you're interested in knowing about, or if you're not and you're just curious about how much alcohol these different countries consume. And so when you're choosing that, be careful about capitalization because R is case sensitive, and then also be careful not to lose the quotes around this country. So you don't want to delete these quotation marks either. And so it's kind of pretty cool. I at least think it's cool. I don't really know. I guess I'm at a loss for other countries. Oh, New Zealand would be cool. Should check that out. Okay, so they also drink kind of a lot. I wonder like a South American, like Brazil. Oh, that's more than I thought. Or what about, okay, sorry, this is the last one. Okay. So you can mess around with that if you want. There's also kind of a question about seeing if you could change the fill color of these bins. And so right now the fill color looks like it's white. If you go back up to the code chunk, you could just kind of scan the code and I'm seeing, okay, here it says fill equals white. That must be how I change the fill color. I'm going to change it to purple. And then you should see the fill color change. So we're just kind of messing around, making sure that we could all kind of run code and change these little things here and there. For the rest of this, there won't be any video until the end, and so I'm going to kind of leave you to running through a lot of this code, like looking at which countries don't consume any alcohol, which is kind of interesting. Like it looks like a lot of countries in the Middle East don't consume any alcohol, which is something I suppose you would know if you were more worldly than I am. And so you could just kind of keep going and kind of reading through, running the code, answering these questions here and there. And then we will pick up later in the next video. But if you have any questions as you're running through, as always, don't hesitate to ask. I want to emphasize again that I don't want anyone being stuck and getting frustrated, especially for this first day that is kind of completely remote. And so definitely let me know if you have any questions, and hope you enjoy messing around with the alcohol data a little bit more, as well as this athletes data set.